Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Later in the program, we will connect you with resources for common mental health concerns facing older Americans. That's coming up. First tonight, the Cancer Moonshot, an effort by the Obama administration to quicken the pace of medical milestones in the fight against cancer. Joining us for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Kevin Cullen, the Marlene and Stuart Greenebaum Distinguished Professor of Oncology at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and Director of the University of Maryland Marlene and Stuart Greenebaum Comprehensive Cancer Center. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
Jeff, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
When we say it's a cancer moonshot, does it give the impression that we're going to go somewhere fabulous by the end of the decade?
Well, what Vice President Biden said is it's not really to completely eliminate cancer at the end of the decade. We would love to be able to do that, but that's not realistic. What he wants the moonshot to do is, he says, do 10 years of cancer research in 5. He wants to double the pace of improvement with a focused effort and really accelerate the kind of improvements that we're seeing in cancer research and cancer care.
We want to talk about where we're going, but for a second, let's talk about where we've been.
Sure.
Over the last decade, what do you have in your toolkit that you didn't have 10 years ago that's most important to you?
Well, there are lots of different things.
Is there one drug, one scan?
I think probably the most important advance in the last decade has been the advent of immunotherapy, and that's evolving very, very rapidly. But that's just one of many things that collectively is reducing the mortality from cancer by about 2% per year. That doesn't sound like a lot, but over the course of a decade, that's very, very meaningful. Cancer mortality in Maryland and across the country is half of what it was when I was a kid. And my mom died of cancer, my father died of cancer. So we're making really important progress. Immunotherapy is just one example of how we're doing that.
Your family history is what led you into this particular field?
Very much so. I had, from the time I was a little kid, had an interest in biology and medicine, but my mom, who was a heavy smoker, developed lung cancer when I was in high school, and she passed away. And my father, who was also a heavy smoker, passed away from leukemia while I was in medical school. So cancer is something that we've lived in my family for generations, and it's something that I feel very passionate about.
All right, let's put you, with everything you know, in charge of everything for a moment. Vice President Biden has given you the pulpit. If you could control every dollar, every researcher, where would you point it?
First and really important, and people don't understand this well enough, is to do the things that we know. And we could cut cancer mortality in the United States in half in a couple of years if we completely eliminated tobacco, if everybody kept their weight at a reasonable level, and if we gave vaccinations that we have in hand now that can be very effective at preventing certain types of cancers. If we did all of those things, we would cut cancer mortality in half.
All right, the tobacco link is well known, but what vaccinations?
I work a lot on what's called human papillomavirus. Papillomavirus is the cause of cervical cancer in women. It's also the cause for a rapidly increasing percentage of cancers of the throat and head and neck in men and women. It causes cancers in other parts of the body. It's completely preventable. We've had a vaccine now to prevent papillomavirus infection for about 10 years, and yet it's underutilized.
Now, that vaccine is for kids, right?
It should be given to kids. It should be given to adolescents. Well, the important point, and that's something that people don't appreciate, is that boys, I have a 13-year-old son, my son is more likely to develop an HPV-related cancer when he's an adult than a girl in his class is. So boys are actually at higher risk for developing cancer, but they're less likely to get the vaccine. And we're doing a lot of public information work to try and correct that.
Is it indicated for boys? If a pediatrics practice decided to do that, would insurance cover it?
Yes. And everybody around the age of 13, whether a boy or a girl, should be vaccinated.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question about cancer research, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You can also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. Now, the third thing you mentioned was weight. What's the link between being overweight and cancer? There is an entity called metabolic syndrome, and when you are overweight, you produce too much of proteins like insulin-like growth factors. They can accelerate tumor cell growth. They can promote cancers. So obesity is associated not only with heart disease and excess risk of stroke and conditions like that, but it's also associated with a significantly higher risk of a number of cancers. Do I have to eat a diet of nothing but kale and water? Because you're always hearing that, this has been linked to something or something. Very famous researcher named Malcolm Pike had a great saying. He said, if every girl in the United States had the diet of the rural Chinese farmer, we would eliminate breast cancer in a generation. Trouble is, nobody wants to eat like rural Chinese farmers. So the point is to keep... Do they not get breast cancer? Virtually none. Their diet is so low in protein and fat that their incidence of many cancers is very low. So, but that's not realistic in this country. What is important is to try and keep a reasonable, what's called body mass index. And you can go online. There are any number of ways that you can calculate and see how you are compared to where you ought to be for your age and height. I had read something once about a starvation diet, a plan of just fasting to a painful degree, but that it's useful from a cancer standpoint. It is, but it's not practical, and no one promotes that. So again, I think what we do encourage people is maintain a healthy weight, maintain a healthy diet, and you can significantly reduce your risk of getting cancer. Let's grab a phone call. Frederick County, this is Mary. Mary, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
I'd like to know if you're doing anything, your work and research, to avoid the ravages of chemotherapy on bones. I am 40 years past surgery for breast cancer. I did 1 year of chemotherapy. They wanted to do 2. I said if it couldn't do its magic in 1, I wasn't going to give it 2. And so I'm still alive. And when they first started calling us survivors rather than victims, I went down to Georgetown where I had taken it, and I was told at that time it was 16 or 18 years after, and the longest anybody else who had taken it at that time had lived was 10 years. I have very bad osteoporosis. I've had many breaks. I'm in a brace. I've had 10 vertebral fractures. Anyway, and I tried all the medicines, and I really don't want to use Reclast. I'm afraid of it. Mary, let me get you an answer, but congratulations on your success. Best of luck. Thank you for the phone call. Yes, and congratulations as well. I mean, there are 15 million cancer survivors in the United States, and that number is growing rapidly. We're trying very hard to get away from the kind of chemotherapy drugs that were very toxic and used very heavily in earlier generations. And newer treatments like immunotherapy, newer treatments like very focused hormonal treatments for breast and prostate cancer are replacing a lot of the chemotherapy drugs that we used previously. And so a lot of the toxicities that we used to see, fortunately, are not as common today, and that's an ongoing effort. Let's get into immunotherapy a little bit. You talked about it as a major development. To what extent is it out of the lab and into practice? It's very much into practice, and the FDA is approving new drugs, and there are literally hundreds of clinical trials going on at Maryland, at our center, and around the country as we speak. It's probably the most exciting change that I've seen in the time that I've been an oncologist. This phone call from AD in Dagsboro, Delaware. Thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question regarding, the World Health Organization has called Roundup and Monsanto's pesticides and herbicides, these are major cancer carcinogens. I'd like to know when the cancer communities are going to step up and really get on this, because country after country has done the research. I've seen the research. I've studied it myself. I have bladder cancer now, and we know that this is a plague, and I want to know when it's going to be acknowledged.
Thank you, sir, for the phone call, and good luck. And have you heard of that?
Well, there's no question that there are carcinogenic chemicals and they're in the environment. In the United States, fortunately, they cause a small minority of the cancers that we see. But in other parts of the world, they are certainly more common. So OSHA, EPA have made important efforts to try and reduce the exposure to those chemicals for people at risk. It's far from where it needs to be. I agree with the caller about that point. But I think there are efforts that are being made, and I think we try not to ignore it. Could we be doing more? Quite possibly. But I think it's an important point, and many people are trying to address it.
Clinical trials, you've mentioned the importance of that a couple of times. How should patients think about that? Because you're frequently asking somebody, certainly if somebody's out of options, you give it a shot. But there are also trials where you need to enroll people who are in better shape, and they're rolling the dice a little bit. Well,
yes and no. I think clinical trials are incredibly important. Where we've gotten in cancer treatment has been the result of clinical trials. That's how we've learned to make improvements over time. So a lot of clinical trials, while yes, you're going on a trial, you're comparing the best known treatment of the day with one that we think will be better. And it's unethical for us to do a clinical trial with something that, unless we really believe it will be better. And we discuss that extensively with patients and want to give them choices. But it's a way, it's the way that we have made important advances in virtually every malignancy that we treat today.
Do the important advances tend to come out of the teaching hospitals, the drug companies? Do they tend to be out of the United States or elsewhere in the world? What do you see?
It's really a close partnership. A great example are drugs called aromatase inhibitors, which were invented at the University of Maryland a few years ago by a woman named Angela Brody. She developed these in her own laboratory, made the first clinical batch of this medicine in her laboratory, and got it into a clinical trial in England because the regulations would allow it there. Her drug is now in use worldwide. It's been the biggest advance in the treatment of breast cancer in the last 25 years. And when she showed the proof of principle that her treatment would work, then pharmaceutical companies got involved and scaled it up and made it available worldwide. And now that drug has saved the lives of tens of thousands of women worldwide.
Is there anything from a regulatory standpoint that's standing in your way?
Regulations are difficult, but I think in general they're there for good reason. We have to be careful, especially when we're doing clinical trials. We have to be incredibly careful and respectful of patient safety, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything in an incredibly rigorous way that is always looking out for the safety of subjects and people who volunteer for clinical research.
The other thought when it comes to the idea of the moonshot effort is that it's not one disease.
Right.
How do you think about that? I mean, how many diseases is it? I mean, can it be put in a few categories?
Well, cancer is hundreds of different diseases that have common characteristics. So treating lung cancer is not the same as treating breast cancer. And yet, there are common characteristics that allow us to develop treatments that cross different disease types. And immunotherapy is probably the best example. The same drug that will stimulate the immune system to target someone's lung cancer can also be effective for some patients, not all unfortunately, who have head and neck cancer or who have kidney cancer. So we have gotten in two sort of parallel but important directions. One is getting really detailed about an individual tumor, understanding the genes at a molecular level and designing a very targeted treatment. That's one way that the field has gone. At the same time, immunotherapy has taken the opposite approach. Let's develop a way of revving up the body's immune system to kill any tumor. Doesn't matter what type it is. And both of those approaches are having some success, and that's a big part of the moonshot, is trying to get them to be even more successful.
Just half a minute here. You recently received a designation as a comprehensive cancer center. What does that mean?
The National Cancer Institute evaluates cancer treatment centers around the country, and there are about 900 of those. Of those, 69 are what are called NCI designated cancer centers. Those are the top research centers in the country. And of those, 45 are what are called comprehensive cancer centers. That's the highest level of designation, and that's something we achieved just this past year, and we're very proud of it.
Congratulations, Dr. Kevin Cullen, University of Maryland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And coming up tonight, dealing with mental health issues. With more of your calls, we'll be right back.
Oh, sometimes
the tears,
I get a good feeling, yeah.
wanting to die. Nobody tells you
I believe
that without it,
I really do believe that
life can be appallingly boring.
something's got a hold on me here.
You're making a mistake.
Am I? This is really very promising.
Oh, something's got a hold on me right
I don't think this is such a good idea.
You've been talking to my mother.
I am about to commit murder.
She always had a bit of a dark side.
Trying to scare me now. It'll give you a story.
He's in love.
I really wasn't. Stay away from my wife.
You got any idea the pressure I am now under?
There is one stage that is the Met and Carnegie Hall. It is the Kennedy Center and a club in Austin. It is closer than any seat in the house, no matter where you call home. PBS, the great American stage that fits in every living room. Supporting your PBS station brings the arts home.
This is a box that showed you a world beyond your own. It was just a box, but the world has changed, and so have we. And now the box can be almost any size or shape. And you decide what you want to explore. Anytime, any place. Break out of the box with PBS.
In this week's Primetime Living, produced in partnership with the Maryland Department of Aging and its Maryland Access Point service, we are joined in studio now by Kim Burton of the Mental Health Association of Maryland. Kim, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
When we think about mental health issues in an older population, is it a different set of problems or the same?
Wow. It is the same, but it shows up a little bit differently. So depression is depression, anxiety is anxiety, but the causes and the way that it shows itself might be a little bit different as people get older.
Is depression something to be expected as we get older?
I'm so glad you asked that question. No, it is a myth, it is a stereotype, and it is a misconception that is shared by lots of older people and their caregivers as well. And therefore it goes under-evaluated, under-recognized, undertreated.
What's the reason for that?
The reason
for being under-recognized, undertreated? Do people, I can think of a couple of possibilities. Somebody goes to their primary care doctor, and as we get older, we accumulate medical issues, and you've got a long list of stuff, and the clock runs out before you ask how you feeling.
Bingo. So a big piece of that is that the symptoms of depression and anxiety, which are the two most common late onset mental health problems, those symptoms can mimic lots of symptoms of other chronic conditions. And so it's confusing to the physicians themselves as well as the people who are having the experience. And if they've never had trouble with depression or anxiety before, they're certainly not thinking that that's what's occurring now. So often it's attributed to the illnesses that they have, but sometimes it can also be symptoms of medication side effects that could be confusing the picture. This is why it's really important for people to look into their mental health issues with a geriatric trained primary care physician or a geriatric trained psychiatrist. A lot of the primary care physicians just haven't had the geriatric and mental health education that might raise a red flag.
Is it simply depressing? Not in the medical sense of the word, but is it depressing when we get older and horizons have narrowed and our physical abilities, maybe mental abilities are limited, and we're taking a bunch of medications, and life is finite. Does that necessarily cross over to being clinically depressed?
That's a really good question. All of the things that you just mentioned are reasons that people kind of say, well, this is a depressing part of life. But you're saying, where's the line between those feelings and those circumstances and the actual disease of depression?
Something that you're going to treat either with therapy or medication.
Right, and we want to make sure that medication isn't the go-to first stop try for depression or anxiety. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because already with older adults, there's usually a picture of maybe 3 to 5 different medications that are involved with that person. And we don't want to add yet another layer of medication. But the truth is, many things can be done non-medicinally to address an emerging or early problem with depression or anxiety. Those would be dietary changes, exercise, and definitely stress management. So you raised a lot of circumstances that develop stress in an individual, and people have complicated feelings about these changes, many of which you mentioned. People feel powerless over these changes, and they represent loss. And certainly they're going to have feelings around that, and they're going to have feelings that are sad that they may cause depression. But the difference between sadness and depression is pretty real. Same with grief.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question, mental illness and the elderly, give us a call. Let's start with Montgomery County. This is Janet. Janet, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yes, I was calling. I have an aunt who passed away a couple of years ago in her mid-70s. She suffered with schizophrenia, was diagnosed in her early 20s or mid-20s. I'm wondering how much of that might be hereditary, but more so, what other kinds of treatments and things are out there. She went off her meds because they drove her crazy, trying to stay on them. Are there new things happening in that field?
Janet, thank you very much. This might be a good time to talk about your background and what the Mental Health Association does.
So my background is in geriatric mental health. The Mental Health Association is an agency that provides education and advocacy. We don't provide treatment or treatment services, but we are definitely looking at the horizon of new treatments, and she brought up treatments for schizophrenia, for example, and her aunt's dislike for medication. That's a really common issue, people not liking the side effects of their psychiatric medications. But some of those medications are absolutely necessary. So the Mental Health Association has engaged in a program called Brain Futures, and we're looking at the horizon of treatments and methods for treating serious mental illness that's beyond the medicinal realm.
You also brought with you a nice brochure.
I did, thank you.
Where is it available? What's in it?
So this is a guidebook. We call it Mental Health and Aging Guidebook. This is something that we make available to anybody who's interested. We will mail them out for free. And they are available at the Mental Health Association of Maryland. And it is a pretty comprehensive guidebook on all issues of cognitive impairment, mental health, behavioral health, substance use disorders, caregiver stress, good for the older adult and people who are taking care of them.
Great. Let's talk to Alfred in Harford County. Alfred, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Well, I'm 93 years old, and I've had many physical things in my life. Now, what causes people to not face reality and go into depression?
Well, not facing reality and going into depression are two different things. So let me hit on the going into depression. What can cause people to go into depression, Albert, is issues of pain, issues of diminished functional capacity, medications, as I've mentioned before, and there are chronic health conditions that are very common in later life that are highly associated with depression and anxiety, and those are cancer, so it was great to hear the gentleman you had before, cancer, stroke, heart disease, conditions that diminish vision and hearing. There's a plethora of things really that contribute to what we call late onset depression and anxiety.
Let's try to fit in one more phone call. Baltimore County, this is Gloria. Gloria, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Yes, I know a family where a family member was obvious to the family becoming depressed and exhibiting different signs of depression and difference in personality. And this was a family that was well connected. They knew doctors at Hopkins who referred them.
Gloria, I'm really short on time, but this was a question about the family noticing or not noticing?
Noticing.
Okay.
They noticed. They begged for help. They went to every department, referred by top doctors.
Okay, I'm short on time. I apologize. But Kim, where do you go for help?
That's a good question, and I think her frustration is rooted in the fact that we have a very small workforce for geriatric mental health services. So where you go largely depends on where you are, and that's one of the reasons contacting Maryland Access Point is a really good idea.
Leave it there. Kim,
Okay.
thanks so much. Thank you for joining us for Direct Connection. We're back Thursday with Your Money in Business. Have a good night.
Your Health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.